The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, got some midday news for you. Obviously, a lot of you are following the Commanders offseason very closely. So anything that happens, you're going to be all over it. And we got some news this morning. The Commanders have given defensive tackle Jonathan Allen permission to seek a trade. What does that mean? So first off, I have a double O to administer. Okay. I was wrong because I didn't think they were going to do this. Okay. I'm not shocked that they're moving on from a guy like Jonathan Allen based off of what he is being paid and the production that they're getting. I'm not shocked because of that. It makes sense that they're doing this, which is why I am shocked, because it makes so much sense. We don't need the money, and that's something that I had highlighted. Like, we don't need the money, so I don't think they're going to press this, and we don't have depth on the defensive line. Contrary to popular belief, we're not okay down there. Okay? You know, the pundits and the talking heads who don't watch this team, oh, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, they've got tremendous depth. No, we don't. We're not good down there. Okay? And to take a step further, moving on from a guy like Jonathan Allen further creates a hole on a roster that already has plenty of them to begin with. So no, I didn't see this coming. If there was going to be a moving on from Jonathan Allen, in my mind, because I heard a lot of conversations this weekend, one surrounding Jonathan Allen in particular. You move on from him so they could go out and go get Osa Odigizua, the Dallas Cowboy free agent defensive tackle who Dan Quinn knows very intimately. And my rebuttal to that is, so you want to go get a 285, 290-pound defensive tackle to replace a guy that's 300 pounds who we struggle to stop the run with? And you want to go get an even smaller defensive tackle? Where's the psychological sense in that? You need to wash your face and get your mind right. But there is a connection, there is a tie, and I understand that conversation, but I don't think they're trying to rip, Jonathan Allen's money up and then go spend a bunch more on Osa Odigizua. That doesn't make any sense. But these are the types of conversations that are starting to arise, right? Again, believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man Louie T. And I told you, I didn't expect them to do anything from a cutting standpoint. Didn't make any sense. We don't need the money. And in my mind, I said, if they're going to cut Jonathan Allen, it'll be after the draft. After they get someone in the draft, after they land his replacement, that's when they would go ahead and do something with the Jonathan Allen and, move on from him. If they were comfortable doing that, obviously. That's when you would be able to do that. Not a second more. But clearly, $16 million is a lot of money, goddammit. Who are we kidding? I didn't think they would do this because, and I am shocked that we're here this early in the offseason because, one, we don't have depth at that position. This is a very deep draft at defensive tackle. So that helps a lot. But one, we don't have depth at the position. And two, this just makes too much sense. And I was like, and maybe this is me kind of still having a slight bit of PTSD, right? Where when something makes this much sense, you're like, yeah, but you try to find reasons like, we don't need the money. You can always use more money, right? There's no such thing as having too much money. You can always use more. But I just didn't think they would do it. I just didn't. But what this means, them giving him permission to seek a trade, what it effectively means is they're willing to cut him. They are willing to cut Jonathan Allen. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to. But when you tell a player you can go seek a trade, it means you're actively looking to deal him, which means you're willing to part ways with said player. Now, the Eagles told Josh Sweat he could find a deal last year. He didn't find one. They brought him back, and he helped them win the Super Bowl. So it's no guarantee that Jonathan Allen will be traded. But the likelihood is, if he doesn't find a suitor, they're probably then going to ask him. They don't have to ask him anything because they could cut him and earn $16 million, right? His cap hit is like $5 and some change million. They'll eat that gladly to save $16 million. And again, he hasn't been an impact player here over the last 2 years in particular. The injury really hurt him last season, but before the injury, he wasn't doing much of anything anyhow. So them telling him he can find a trade partner is essentially them saying, if you don't, we will cut you. Which again it's mind-boggling because I didn't think we would get here. I didn't. That's why I told you I don't see anybody being cut because we don't need the money. We don't need the cap flexibility. We're not up against it. We have the third most cap space in the league. Didn't think this was an issue. But again, who doesn't want more money? You know, there's a Terry McLaurin extension waiting to happen this offseason. You add $16 million to your cap, and that helps in facilitating that, right? So I get it. I just didn't think we would get here. And just so we're clear, a guy like Jonathan Allen, not really going to bring you back much in the form of trade value, right? In my mind, I think the best you're going to get for Jonathan Allen is a 4th round pick. That's the most you're going to get for him. He's 30 years old. He's on the wrong side of 30. The production is declining. He came off of a season in which, you know, he dealt with an injury that cost him most of his season. But before then, he wasn't very productive. Wasn't super productive last season either. And he's in the last year of his deal. And he's making $16 million. Or $22 million, excuse me. $22 million. Who's signing up for that? I don't know of many teams that are looking to add a Jonathan Allen at $22 million a year at 30 years old with 1 year left on his deal. Now, I could be wrong about that. We all know. I told you Adam Peters wants more draft capital. So many of you keep talking about him trading away assets. He wants to acquire them. You think he's happy with only having 7 picks going into the draft? He'd much rather have 10 right now. But that's the cost of doing business. He'd much rather be sitting with 9 or 10 right now. We've got 7. So if he can acquire an additional pick, a 4th, a 5th, we don't have a 4th round pick. He'd be elated to get a 4th round pick for Jonathan Allen. Elated. I don't think he's going to. And you know what doesn't really help out his situation? That this is a really deep defensive tackle draft class. So once again, in my mind, I figured Jonathan Allen, someone like him, would have more value after the draft than before it. And you'd be more likely to cut him after the draft, not before it, because you want to see how this thing plays out. Not everybody's going to end up with a defensive tackle. At that point, you don't get your guy in the draft. Hey, I got a defensive tackle here. Been productive throughout his career. Can help you win. But if we're talking before the draft, everybody's hopeful that they'll get their hands on some defensive tackle in the draft that's young, that's cheap, that allows them cap flexibility and might be an asset to them down the road. You know, no one's looking to spend assets. No one's looking to spend $22 million on a 30-year-old defensive tackle. That's not ideal. So for those of you thinking that Jonathan Allen is going to fetch you, this significant interest in Hall, you're sadly mistaken. Yeah, I'm thinking the best you'll get is a fourth if anybody's willing to trade for him, which there's got to be one team. All it takes is one. There's got to be one team that's interested in Jonathan Allen. You're probably looking at a fifth. That's my guess. That's my guess. If the contract were a little bit more affordable, maybe, just maybe, a team would be willing to give you that fourth, because I think ideally that's what you want. There's no way you're getting a day 2 pick for him. No way in hell somebody's giving you a 3rd round pick for him. It ain't happening. I will be shocked if that happens. One thing that we often get wrong is trade value. We often value these players at a much higher rate than the league does. We're thinking, oh man, you're going to get a 2nd round pick, and then the guy ends up going for a 4th. And you're like, whoa, that's all it took, a 5th. You're like, wait, what? I'm starting to get hip to the game now. And I understand you're not getting a day 2 pick for Jonathan Allen. You can get a day 3 pick. And I'm not thinking it's going to be 4th. I'm thinking that's your best case scenario to me, a 4th. I think you could get a 5th for him. But I'm absolutely shocked that we're here with Jonathan Allen, because again, we don't possess the depth. We already needed a defensive tackle. If you kept Jonathan Allen, we needed to add somebody to the mix. Obviously, they added Johnny Newton last year knowing that they would be at this spot potentially this year, right? They didn't know how Jonathan Allen was going to play in 2024. He could have had his best season of his career and could have had 10.5 sacks. It could have been an absolute disruptor up front in this new scheme. And, they could have been in a position where they didn't want to move on from Jonathan Allen. They could have been thinking about trying to extend him, right? Clearly, that's not where we are. And, you hope that you drafted his replacement in Johnny Newton, but none of us saw anything from Johnny Newton last season that would lend you to believe that he's ready to step in, start, and be productive and give you what you need at that position. Right now, I'm going to be honest with you. And again, it's early, and I don't give up on prospects very early or easily for that matter. So don't take this as any type of me, calling Johnny Newton a bust or me quitting on him or any of that. The man's played for one season. Now, I've got high hopes for him still. But nothing I saw last year leads me to believe that Johnny Newton's anything more than a rotational defensive tackle right now at this current juncture. Now, that could all change next year. That could change in year 3. Again, everyone matures at a different rate. So, what one guy comes in the league and doesn't mean the next guy's going to come in the league and do. I always harken back to Nnamdi Asomugha in Oakland with the Raiders. Took him like 3-4 years for him to really blossom. I don't think it was until his 3rd year that people started really saying, oh my God, this guy's really good. So it takes time sometimes. But right now, all we got at defensive tackle, if there's no Jonathan Allen, and again, I'm a big proponent of not carrying dead weight. If you think Jonathan Allen is dead weight, move on from him. You can't be afraid to move on from a player because you just don't have a lot at the position. Well, go get more. But again, I just didn't see them doing this because we already don't have a lot at the position. All we had to end the season was Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, and Johnny Newton. That was it. Again, we saw a lot of Sheldon Day last year. And I don't know about you, but we saw a lot of guys get opportunities, who frankly I wasn't comfortable with playing the amount of snaps that they were playing in critical games, like the NFC Championship for that matter. Now, here's something that I thought about over the weekend that we don't consider a lot of. And I'm sorry, I know I'm stepping on the toes of Adam Peters. His combine press conference was supposed to be at noon today. So I apologize for stepping on the toes of that. I'm going to catch it later. I had no interest in catching it now because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do a video because I have something to do here in a little bit. So I wasn't going to be able to listen to his whole press conference and then come back and do something afterwards. So I'll have to save that for later. But here's something that we don't really consider when we start talking about this team and what they're building, right? We talk about free agents. We talk about the trade market. We talk about the draft. But we don't talk about in-house options. Guys that they're developing that we didn't see any of last year, that we didn't see any of the behind-the-scenes work that they're putting in, but we don't know how much they like these guys or not. Just because we didn't see Colston Yankoff on offense last year doesn't mean they don't like him as a tight end, and doesn't mean that they don't feel like he can contribute as a tight end moving forward. Just because we didn't see Viliami Fehoko, who is a defensive tackle that the Cowboys drafted in the 5th round, I believe, when Dan Quinn was there back in 2023, that we brought over here to be on our practice squad, who didn't play a single snap for us, doesn't mean that Dan Quinn doesn't like this kid and doesn't think he can't help, right? Moving forward. Like, there are guys on the practice squad, guys that they're developing that they may actually like, that we're not considering. So these are things that we need to take into consideration as well. I'm a big believer of, I don't believe it until I see it. So until we see some of these guys, I just assume you're a practice squad guy. You're a body. But you also have to take that into consideration. But when it's all said and done, $16 million is $16 million. Jonathan Allen is as good as gone. Okay. Either he's getting traded or they're going to cut him. Period. End of discussion. That's what that feels like. This doesn't feel like a, Kirk Cousins situation in Atlanta where they're like, hey, you can go find a trade partner, Kirk. But if we don't, we're more than happy to hold on to you. Because in this league, you need a competent backup. We already paying you, so shit. Might as well just hold on to you if nobody's going to give us something for you. This ain't that. We're not already paying Jonathan Allen. There are no guarantees left for this man on his contract. Okay? So there's no incentive to hold on to him. If they can't find a trade partner, they're looking to collect their $16 million. So he's as good as gone at this point. So add defensive tackle. If it wasn't already on your list, add defensive tackle to your list of needs that this team has, because that's moved up pretty high on the board of needs. It's moved up pretty high on that list of needs. While this is a very deep class of defensive tackles, you hear that very often about positions in the draft, and you have to find a way to maximize your selections. And I can't see them spending. Now, again, 29 is interesting. After 29, all bets are off. 29 is interesting because of all the picks that we possess. That's the one that feels the most best player available-ish to me. Like, you're literally in a position where if something of great talent falls to you, you just take it. And that could be a defensive tackle. We've talked about it already. It could be a defensive tackle. It could be a tight end. It could be a receiver. It could be a corner. It could be an edge rusher. It could be an offensive tackle. In a weak class of offensive tackles, you may feel the need, hey, let's grab one here, because if we wait until, 58 or wherever our second round selection is, it may not be anything there that really satisfies us at the position. I'll tell you this. If they can somehow finagle an additional day 2 pick out of Jonathan Allen, Chef P is a wizard. They're just I don't even think they're going to be able to move him, to be honest with you, because this kind of smells like either we're trading him or we're releasing him. And if teams just hold their water, he'll be on the free agent market here shortly. I don't think this is a coincidence that as we head to the combine, this gets out, that he's available, because this is where deals get done, right? We talked about this already. If you're going to trade for someone or you're going to trade a player, this is when those deals start to consummate right now. This is when those conversations take place. I don't think it's a coincidence that as they head to the combine, as they're speaking for the first time today, that this news comes out on the heels of the combine really kicking off today. That's not an accident. So they're going to try to get something done. But I'm just telling you, this feels like a guy that they're probably going to have to release, more likely than not. And what I've heard from people that I trust is that the real value in this year's draft is in day 2. Rounds 2 and 3 are where it's at. Like, you know how last year we had all those day 2 picks, right? We had all those day 2 picks. This is one of those years where you want to have a bunch of day 2 picks. We only have 2 picks, the standard amount. I know that unless there's a top tier talent that falls to Washington at 29 that they just can't believe is on the board, they would love to get out of that pick, move back, and pick up additional capital in day 2. I don't know if that option is going to exist. I'm just going to work off the assumption that they can't get out of 29. They have to stay and make a pick, and that, they may be like, he traded back in the second round last year. Like, it doesn't have to be 29, but we're not sitting at the top of the second round like we were last year. That's the difference. Is we have 58, we don't have 38. So, or 59 or whatever the pick is, right? I got to look up the exact number. I just times 29 by 2 and that got me 58. I could be wrong, and we could have the 57th or the 59th pick, but give or take 1 or 2, right? Give or take 1, either way. At the end of the day, I don't see us being able to trade and acquire more picks unless it's 29. That said, if you could somehow squeeze a third rounder out of Jonathan Allen, that's a magic trick. That's a magic trick. If you can somehow get an additional day 2 pick out of Jonathan Allen, that's what we call magic. He's a day 3, asset at this point, if an asset at all. So it's going to be interesting to see how this thing goes, how they decide to kind of maneuver this, if they can find a willing trade partner at the combine, and because they want to get this done before the league year starts. I don't think there's any real bonuses, like if he's on the roster, there's no guarantees in his contract. And I don't think there's any bonuses or anything. Like if he's on the roster on March 21st, there's a $5 million bonus. I don't think any of that exists. So there's no real timeline of when this has to get done. But they probably want to get this done before the start of the new league year, which is why they put this out there now, why they're going to try and get this done. And again, it's smart to try to get it done before the draft, before teams, go into the draft and have an opportunity to draft a guy. Now they don't need a Jonathan Allen, but it could also work both ways where team could go into the draft thinking they're going to get something at defensive tackle. It doesn't work out the way that they thought. They come out of there not satisfied with their defensive tackle position, and now all of a sudden they have a need. But you would like to strike while the iron is hot. It's hot now, and it could be hotter after the draft, or it could be absolutely ice cold after the draft. So you rather try now and not wait in a deep defensive tackle draft class and see what you can get versus wait until after and maybe everybody's gotten what they need at defensive tackle and you're stuck sitting there with a guy that you're probably going to have to release at some point. So, we'll see what happens. All right. With that said, I'm just starting my process with this draft. And I think I wanted to start at running back because it's a position that a lot of the fans are really enamored with. And there's some interesting guys in this draft. And we'll see ultimately how they go about that position, how they go about wide receiver, because what was funny is Daniel Jeremiah, who, I really trust his opinion when it comes to the draft. He was talking about this draft in particular, and he said he's really interested to see how these guys perform at the combine. It's got him even more excited about the combine because this is such a weak free agency group. And I tend to agree. Like, compared to last year's free agency crop, this is some shit that we're really parsing through to try to find a hidden gem here or there. Like, the best of the best probably aren't even going to make it to free agency. The guys that some of you have talked about, some of us have talked about, I've talked about T. Higgins. I told you he wasn't going to be available. They haven't slapped the franchise tag on him yet. They don't have to. They got until March the 4th before anything has to be done. By all accounts, they're working on a long-term deal as we speak. But if that doesn't get done, they'll slap the franchise tag on him with no hesitation. Chris Godwin, that's another guy that, Commanders fans were willing to give a deal to if he were available. I don't think he's going to be available. He strikes me as a guy that's not leaving Tampa Bay. He strikes me as a Buccaneer. So I don't see anything getting done there, right? You look at edge rusher, like all the positions that we need outside of corner. I actually think there are some really good, corners that you could find that can, upgrade the position for us. But there aren't a lot of defensive tackles that get you excited. There aren't a lot of defensive ends that get you excited. There aren't a lot of receivers that get you excited. There aren't many, tight ends. There are a couple of tight ends that I wouldn't mind, kicking the tires on, but there isn't a lot of edge. There aren't a lot of edge rushers. There aren't a lot of tackles. There are maybe 2 or 3 guys that are intriguing, but again, this isn't a great free agency crop. It really isn't. So again, they're gonna be aggressive in free agency, despite that what I just said. And when I say aggressive, I've already told you aggressive may not be big name, big spending, but a lot of moves. It might be a lot more quantity, not necessarily over quality, but quantity nonetheless. Similar to last year. Ton of quantity, but we also got quality out of those guys. I'm assuming the same thing this year. A lot of quantity, but the question is, will we get the same quality out of those players? I'll tell you this. The draft this year is going to mean more than the draft last year, outside of Jaden Daniels, of course. The draft this year is going to mean a lot more for this team in terms of productivity and how we play. Listen to this statement I'm about to make, because I think it is It's a real statement. It's an impactful statement that I'm about to make. In terms of, again, excluding Jaden Daniels, right? He was the number 2 overall pick. He was a quarterback. Nobody impacts the game more than a quarterback. Remove him from the equation. We had 8 other selections last year after Jaden Daniels. Okay. When you think about our draft class from last season, Coleman and Mikey Samer still. Now, look, we got a lot of snaps out of Johnny Newton. We got a lot of snaps, and he blocked his ass off. Did Ben Sinnott. But outside of Mikey Samer still and Brandon Coleman, we didn't get anything out of that class. Again, we're excluding Jaden Daniels. We know what he was and what he provided for us. Outside of those 2 guys, we didn't really get much out of that class in terms of like huge production. Now, we got a lot of snaps out of Newton. We needed him. We got a lot of snaps out of Sinnott, and he was good early on in the season. And he tapered off a little bit. I think the injuries and things of that nature started to take effect, but we didn't get a lot out of any of the other guys. I mean, we got a little something out of John Baptiste, which was a pleasant surprise. Anytime you get anything out of a 7th round pick, you should feel really fortunate. But honestly speaking, it wasn't a draft class that we relied on all that heavily to help produce wins throughout the 2024 season. Again, excluding Jaden Daniels. Mikey Samer still was huge. But there weren't many game-changing plays made by Johnny Newton or Ben Sinnott. There were plays made. Sinnott had a big block to key Jaden Daniels for a touchdown run against the Cowboys in the first game. He caught the touchdown pass against the Panthers, his only touchdown grab of his rookie season. He had the big catch in the Eagles game in the playoffs on the 4th down fake punt. Like, he had impactful plays. Johnny Newton had the fumble recovery against the Bears, right? Now, they ultimately got the ball back and went back down the field and scored, but that was a big fumble recovery. But again, not a lot of plays made by, like, could Carl Davis have recovered that same fumble? It's not like Johnny Newton forced the fumble. It was a handoff to a damn backup center, and he fumbled it. All Newton did was recover the ball that fell into his lap. Carl Davis probably could have done that, okay? It's not like he forced the fumble. So what I'm telling you is, this year's draft class, we're going to be relying on them to help produce wins at a much higher rate than we did the draft class last year. Again, excluding Jaden Daniels. We're going to need these guys to come in and contribute more so than we did last year. And again, that's part of having expectations. We didn't have any expectations last year. So you weren't looking at the draft picks and saying, hey, we need you to come in here and do X, Y, Z. We were just looking to see if we had guys that were keepers that were going to be a part of the solution and not the problem moving forward. Well, now we've got real expectations. So now you're not looking for guys that come in here and just, hey, let's see if this guy can play. No, we need a guy that can come in here and help right away. Like, it's not going to be okay to have a Johnny Newton 2nd round pick or a Ben Sinnott 2nd round pick this year. That's not okay. Like, whoever we take in the 2nd round, we need that guy to come in and contribute. Now, it's got to be more like Mike Samer still than it can be Johnny Newton or Ben Sinnott. That 3rd round pick, it's got to be more like Brandon Coleman and less like Luke McCaffrey. We can't have that this year. We don't have multiple 3rds and multiple 2nds this year. That 2nd round pick's got to hit like Mikey. It can't be like the other 2. That 3rd round pick has to hit like Brandon Coleman. It can't be like Luke McCaffrey. You get what I'm saying? It's different this year. You have less picks, and now there's expectation that those day 2 picks got to hit. We need them. Whether that's a receiver, whether that's a tight end, whether it's an edge rusher, whether it's a tackle, whether it's a running back, we need those guys to produce. Corner, whatever. Defensive tackle. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Can't wait to see what free agency brings, because that will definitely paint a much clearer picture as to what it is we need going into the draft. If there's one thing I can tell you, though, it's that I trust, unequivocally, I trust this front office and staff. I trust Lance Newmark. I trust Adam Peters to find good football players. Free agency, draft, whatever the case may be. I trust them. We're in good hands, like with Allstate. So this Jonathan Allen domino is the first of many to fall this offseason. The first of many. I hope they find a trade partner. I really do. My guess is they're going to have to cut him. If they want that $16 million, they're going to have to cut him. And again, I'm not shocked that they're cutting him based off of performance, age, how much they're paying him, what they can save. None of that is shocking. I'm shocked because it's a position of need already as is, and now you're making it even weaker. And we don't need the cap space. I just didn't think they were going to do it. But here we are. So it's actually a smart move. $16 million. I just didn't think they were going to do it because they don't need the money. But again, the only thing better than having a lot of money is having even more money. Can't be mad at them saying, hey, that's 16 mil, bro. That's 16 mil over there. For a 30-year-old defensive tackle who's declining in productivity. I'm looking over there at that 16 mil too, like, hey, that's a lot. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Anyhow, I digress. Let's get to the comment section and we'll get out of here real quick. I ain't gonna hold y'all up too long. Nike, been a member for 19 months. Who writes, who is someone you think we signed this offseason? Well, I've already told you, I think our first priority in the free agent market is one of two things. Obviously, you take care of the guys that you want back. I think they want Zach Ertz back. I think they want Bobby Wagner back. I think they want Jeremy Chin back. These are guys you take care of first. If there's a Terry McLaurin extension to get done, you try and get that done as well, right? But if you're talking outside of our building, free agents wise, corner and tackle are the first two. Like, again, assuming that they're not continuing with the Brandon Coleman experiment, which we can't be assured of, which is why I've stayed away from that, because I don't know where their thought process is with Brandon Coleman as to whether or not they've, kind of resigned to the fact that he's probably a guard in this league more so than a tackle. They may have been okay with the production they got out of him and say, hey, he was dealing with a knee, he was dealing with a shoulder, he was never fully healthy, and this is what we got out of him, and we feel good. And with a full offseason, remember, he didn't have a full offseason because he was injured and dealing with the shoulder injury that never fully healed, by the way. So they may be telling themselves, oh, he's going to be just fine with a full offseason, fully healthy, building off of what he just did. And so they may be cool with him at left tackle again. And if they are, then I think corner is your first, like, that to me is the one position you should spend big on in free agency. It's corner if you're not going after a left tackle. Nothing else on the free agent market, to me, warrants you spending that kind of money. You give it up for a corner, and then you start filling in the gaps elsewhere, right? I told you I want Tutu Atwell. So I'd be willing to, and that's not going to cost you a lot of money. They're going to sign one of those type receivers. It may not be a Tutu Atwell. It may be, one of those hyphenated guys that I've been running from, a Valdez Scantling or the dude from the Titans. It may be one of those dudes, right? That I really want no parts of. Westbrook Akine. Again, it could be a Darius Slayton, right? It feels like they're going to sign one of those type of guys and then draft someone as well, right? But again, I told you a number 2 receiver is big for me. It still feels like something that they need to get done. And whether that's trading for a Cooper Kupp or, going out there and seeing what's available, we'll see. But corner is the one position I can guarantee you that we're going to sign in free agency. So whether that's, Mooney Ward, I told you I like Mike Jackson out of Carolina, Paulson Adebo. I'm not comfortable with him, but he's young, he's talented. And another name that's probably on that list. But there's enough corners out there for us to go pluck one and feel comfortable about what we just did. Yoshi, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Yoshi writes, "Hey Lou, what's up, Yoshi? Saw on X that Jay Fowler just reported that the Eagles could try to snake us if we're really close to a Myles Garrett deal. Smoke and mirrors? Believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man Louie T. I don't believe anything I hear this time of the year. I don't run with anything. Everything is stored into the memory bank for later usage if necessary. Nothing wrong with taking some information that you gather. And again, it may prove to be false information, erroneous, right? But there's nothing wrong with taking that data and storing it. If you need it later, it's always good to be able to recall it, right? Go into the mental Rolodex, find it, pull it out, and say, oh, yeah, I remember seeing that, rather than to just discard it from the beginning. And now you trying to go find it again, or you trying to recollect what it was, right? No. Take in all the information and be mindful of it. But again, we don't know what's going to, I already told you, Myles Garrett, until something happens, it ain't happening with him. So we'll see what happens. But again, the entire league is going to be interested in Myles Garrett. And when you narrow it down to the NFC, there's Detroit, there's Philadelphia, there's Washington, there's San Francisco. There are plenty of teams that are going to be interested in a Myles Garrett trade. Okay. So it's not just Philadelphia, it's not just Washington. Detroit might be higher on that list than anybody else. Who's to say? At this point, I don't concern myself. I'll be honest with you. I don't concern myself with things that don't seem realistic. I try to concern myself with the things that are a lot more realistic than the things that don't feel realistic. So Myles Garrett feels like you're chasing a ghost right now. That's for me. I can't speak for anybody else. Myles Garrett feels like you're chasing a ghost because it doesn't feel real to me, because I don't think he's going anywhere. So I would more so focus on free agency. This Jonathan Allen trade thing is big news, because I didn't think they were going to do anything from a cutting a player standpoint, which, they haven't said they're cutting Jonathan Allen, but them telling him he can seek a trade and find a trade partner is them saying, hey, we're one step away from having to cut you, right? We've got one foot out of the door already. We would prefer for the other foot to leave based off of a trade, but if we have to have the other foot leave based off of cutting you, so be it. But we're going to get our 16 mil one way or the other. We're going to get our 16 mil. Whether that's trading you, we would much rather trade you and get some draft compensation on the way out. But we getting our 16 mil. Best believe that. That's what this says to me. Barry Curtis Jr. Been a member for 40 months. Salute to you, Barry Curtis Jr., who writes, hello, Lou. What's going on, Barry? With all of these holes on the team, I don't think we can afford to take RN early. He says, B-Rob, I think he meant a running back. B-Rob and Eck aren't the best, but it's not a hole to me. Thoughts? It wasn't about them being a hole. It's about not having the explosiveness you want from that position. We've lacked it for a very long time. The last dynamic player we had at running back, technically dynamic, was J.D. McKissick. But think about J.D. McKissick. How many explosive plays did he have for us? Not very many. All right. Not very many. So we never really saw, I guess, Antonio Gibson, right? But how many times did we see explosiveness from him, right? There was the screen against Buffalo. There was the jet sweep against the Dallas Cowboys. It was the wide receiver screen against Baltimore. That's about it. And of the 3 plays I just named from Antonio Gibson, 2 of them were in his rookie season. The third, the screen against Buffalo, was in his second season. So again, we really didn't see the explosiveness from these guys that we drafted them to be. Or in the case of J.D. McKissick, that we signed them to be. So we really haven't had any explosiveness out of the position. I mean, the last real explosive dynamic back, and we got him on the tail end of his career when he wasn't all that dynamic and explosive, and he still is the most explosive shit we've had in the last 7 to 10 years, is Adrian Peterson. He was the one with the 91-yard run on a Monday night against Philadelphia. When the last time you seen a 91-yard run by this team? That was Adrian Peterson who did that. So it's been a long time. What was that, 2017? Adrian Peterson had that run? So, I mean, what are we talking about? That was 2018, excuse me. 2018. First year without Kirk. Alex Smith season. What are we talking about? So, it's not that B-Rob and Eck are holes on the roster. They're not. To me, to some people they are. Not to me. It's about getting faster at the position, getting more dynamic and explosive at the position. That's what it's always been to me. I don't see B-Rob as a problem. I don't see him being this dynamic, lead tailback, but you can get by with him as your lead back and then having a dynamic change of pace. A guy that when he comes in the game, he can catch a screen and go 62 yards for a touchdown. We don't have a guy on the roster who can do that right now. Eck can't do that. B-Rob can't do that. So it's not a hole, but it's a position that you would like to upgrade. So in a deep class of running backs, why would you pass on an opportunity to do that? Video channel. And you're right. This and to answer your question, Barry, there are a lot of holes on this roster. But again, what gives you the best value? What gives you the best bang for your buck at that pick, right? Like, remove needs from the equation and just say, hey, we're sitting here at 29. What is the best value? What is the best usage of this pick? Is it a running back? If it is, take him. If the best usage of the 29th pick in the draft is a tight end, like if it's Colston Loveland, take him. What are we talking about? That's a top 10 talent in this year's draft. If he's sitting there at 29, take him. That's what it boils down to, is how do we make the best use of this pick? If that's a running back, do it. If it's a defensive tackle, do it. If it's an offensive tackle, do it. If it's a tight end, do it. If it's a receiver, do it. And that's the beauty of where we are. I trust the guys in charge that they're going to do exactly that. In the past, we could never be too sure if that was going to happen because they were always drafted for needs. That's how we ended up with Jamin Davis, right? That's how we ended up with Fedarian Mathis in the second round, because we had dum-dums in the front office who drafted for need instead of drafting the best player available. Because we needed more turnovers, they didn't take the right corner. They took the guy that had more collegiate turnovers produced. We don't have to worry about that shit anymore, right? We don't have to worry about our group telling said player, right, Brian Branch, that we're going to take you if you're on the board, and then he's on the board and we pass him up for a different position and we get the pick wrong. Video channel. Thank you for being a member for 19 months. Who writes, what will John Allen be best known from his time in DC? What is his most memorable play or game? I would say his 7 years post-game interview is his most notable moment. I think most fans, and that's the sad part about Jonathan Allen, his legacy here, he doesn't have a signature moment on the field. I think the sad part is he's a good player here. He has over 40 sacks for this franchise from the defensive tackle position. That's nothing to sneeze at. He'll probably most be known for his passionate pre-game speeches. I think most fans will see past those and they'll go to the do-rag post-game rant when he famously said, he wanted pretty much to play for a contending team. He wanted out if that's not what was going to be here. He was sick and tired of losing. I think that's the most memorable Jonathan Allen tirade. I mean, he did a lot of good here. He was one of the few leaders we had over this pretty rough stretch here. The name change from going from Gruden to Rivera to, Quinn. He saw all three of those. One of the few players left on the roster that can say, I experienced, I survived. You know how you get one of those shirts, I survived hurricane, whatever, or I survived blank. He's one of the few players that can say, I survived 3 administrations and Snyder, right? Tressway can say that. Jonathan Allen can say that. And Deron Payne, to a lesser extent, can say that. But yeah, no, he can say that because Gruden was here all of 18. He got fired 5 games into 19. So yeah, Deron can say that as well. But nobody else can. It's just Tress, Jonathan Allen, and Deron Payne that can say, I was here for Gruden, all of Rivera, and got a piece of Quinn as well. So in that time, he was a good player, but again, nothing like with Kerrigan. He made a lot of plays here, but most people remember his first game of his career. He had a pick against Eli Manning, batted ball in the air, picked it off. You remember that. You know, that was a big play in that game. I remember, like, you know, you remember those massive plays. Kerrigan, another big play Kerrigan made. My favorite one is against Dallas. Sacks Dak Prescott in the end zone, forces a fumble. It's recovered in the end zone. I want to say it was Daron Payne. Somebody, I can't remember exactly, or it might have been the other way around. Like Montez Sweat or somebody hit him. The ball comes out and Kerrigan recovered. I think Kerrigan was the one that hit him. The ball came out. And then like Daron Payne or somebody picked it up and scored the touchdown. I felt like it was a defensive tackle. It wasn't Jonathan Allen. I know that much. So that is like a memorable play. You remember that from Kerrigan. I don't have one of those for Jonathan Allen. I just remember him always having something to say. And whether that's good or bad, that's his legacy, I guess, right, at this point. But, you know, we'll see what happens. Rob Yu, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Rob Yu writes, thoughts on Jedrick Wills Jr. at tackle or guard? I'm good on him, actually. Maybe at guard, but again, I don't think we're in the guard market. Like, we don't need a starting guard right now. Like, if you're going to draft a guard, cool, right? That you're going to develop behind Nick Allegretti, but you signed Nick Allegretti last year to be your starting guard, and he didn't do anything wrong this season. And again, if you're looking to replace Nick Allegretti, you can do that a lot cheaper with someone in the draft. Not that Jedrick Wills is going to cost you a ton of money, but because he's not. You could probably get him on that same Mekhi Becton deal that the Eagles got him. What they pay him, $5-6 million last year to play guard? But his tackle days are over in the NFL. Jedrick Wills is not a tackle anymore. To me, he's a guard. So, not interested in him as a tackle. And I don't think we need him at guard. I'm not opposed to them going out and getting somebody at guard. And if that's the guy they wanted to sign, because again, I don't think it's going to cost you a lot. Sure. 1-year deal for Jedrick Wills as a guard. Cool. But guys don't sign 1-year deals a lot of times willingly. If you can sign a 3-year deal, that's what you're after. So we'll see what the market dictates for Jedrick Wills. But I don't anticipate him getting a massive deal out of the mix. So we'll see what he ultimately ends up being. And where. John Dewberry, thank you for the super chat. Preston Smith, thank you. It was Preston Smith who recovered that fumble. All right. Yeah, that was a pretty memorable joint, you know. Kerrigan forced it. That was back in 2018. Kerrigan forced it. Preston Smith recovered it. A lot of people likened it to the 83 NFC Championship game against Dallas because of the nature of that play and how it ended in a touchdown. And it wasn't quite Daryl Grant-esque, right? Wasn't quite that. But it felt good in the moment. It felt good. John Dewberry, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. John writes, how do you feel about trading a third this year and next year's first and third to acquire Garrett, also offloading Davis, or and either Crowder or Bird. I'm trying to make sense of what you're asking. So I get the trade part, the offloading Davis and either Crowder or Bird. Who the hell is Bird? I'm not sure about who that is. Crowder's gone. I don't see any way in which Crowder's back. He was a 1-year stopgap, was Jamison Crowder. He served a purpose. You know, he had some big catches on third down. He returned punts towards the end of the season when OZ became a liability in their minds. But Crowder, you can do better than Jamison Crowder. So I think that was a 1-year thing. Again, Cleveland isn't taking 2/3 and a first for Myles Garrett. That's I can assure you right now, there's a team with 2 first-round picks on the table for Myles Garrett right now. They're not listening to offers, by the way. But if I had to guess, there's a team that right now would be willing to part ways with their first-round pick this year and their first-round pick next year to get Myles Garrett. If you think the price tag is anything less than that, again, it may not be the 3 ones that I initially came out of the gate with. I wouldn't be again, the way that the price gets pushed up is having multiple suitors. You won't find a player, if he becomes available, if he is made available, and it is known that he is available. If it is common knowledge that Myles Garrett is now on the market and teams can start putting in their bids, you won't find a player that is a non-quarterback that is going to fetch you more in return than a guy like Myles Garrett. This is a 2-time defensive player of the year in the NFL. Like, these guys don't grow on trees. You don't think somebody's going to be willing to give you you offered up a 1 and 2 threes, John. You don't think somebody be willing to give a 1 and 2 twos? That's how this works. You say, all right, I'll give you a 2 threes and a 1. Somebody says, oh shit, well, I'll give you a 1 and 2 twos then. Somebody else said, shit, I'll give you 2 ones. And everybody start looking around like, I don't know if I can go that high. Somebody else gonna say, I'll give you 2 ones and a 2. It turns into an auction at that point. I can tell you this much: the Browns aren't giving him away. If they feel compelled to trade him, it won't be for a 1 and 2 threes. That's for damn sure, John. I can assure you of that. T Money, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. T Money writes, what's up, Lou? What's up, T Money? Like the video, people. I appreciate that public service announcement. If you haven't already done so, please hit the like button. Over 570 of you out there, but yet only 172 likes. We can do better than that. So if you haven't hit the like button and you appreciate this content, hit the like button. That helps this channel grow exponentially. Could you see us going after Hassan Reddick? I agree that Myles Garrett stays in Cleveland. His refusal to play last year without a new deal backfired. And for as productive as he had been prior to last season, he was equally as bad last season when he did come back from that hiatus. So bad, in fact, that the Jets ultimately benched him. So, you know, he'd be interesting if you could get him on like a prove it, 1-year prove it deal. That's what he might have to sign after, doing what happened, turning in the effort he turned in last year. It backfired on him. He wanted a big payday, and instead he sat out all of the year. When he came back, he wasn't effective. And now, and he's one of those guys, he's either at or over 30. So now you're like, okay, bro, I'm not giving you a long-term deal at this point. So you're going to have to prove it to me. That might make him hungry, and it might make him dangerous. And, I wouldn't mind I wouldn't mind kicking the tires on a Hassan Reddick on a 1-year deal to prove it. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. Tim O'Brien, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Tim writes, where do you put Scary Terry in wide receiver rankings? Top 5? No, he's not top 5 receiver. We know that for a fact. I think we've done this exercise multiple times on this channel. So I think when we've done this exercise previously, he's landed in that 11 to 14 range every time. So okay, so you say top 5. We can debunk that, right? We can debunk that right now, right? So is Terry McLaurin better than Jamar Chase? No. Is he better than Justin Jefferson? No. Let's go around the league. Is he better than AJ Brown to you? No. Right. Is he better than CeeDee Lamb? There may be a debate amongst some of you. The answer is no. He's not better than CeeDee Lamb. I think he might be more reliable than CeeDee Lamb. Is he more dynamic than CeeDee Lamb? No, he's not. Right. CeeDee Lamb's the better player of the two. Let's see. I mean, there's some rookies where I'm like, I don't know if he's better than, I don't know if he's probably not going to be better than Malik Neighbors. Probably not going to be better than Brian Thomas Jr. But okay, you don't want to do that. You want to go with the body of work. That's fine. We can keep going. All right. So let's move on. Right. Is he better than Amon-Ra St. Brown? Again, that's a debate for y'all. That's just another name to throw out there. Right. Sticking with guys in the NFC. Let's see. Let's go through. There's no more players in the NFC North. West. Is he better than Puka Nacua? Again, that's up for debate. That's up for you guys to decide. Is he better than DK Metcalf? That's up for you to decide, right? Is he better than Marvin Harrison Jr.? I think so right now. Yeah, I wasn't overly impressed with Marvin Harrison Jr.'s rookie season, but he's still really good. So you go to the AFC. Is he better than Tyreek Hill? No. Right? Is he better than Garrett Wilson? You got to ask yourself, how do you feel about that? I've had that discussion with you guys already. Some of you said no. Some of you were like, what are we even talking about? Right? Is he better than, let's see. Is he better than Nico Collins? No, he's not better than Nico Collins. Let's see. Jacksonville, already talked about them. Already talked about Tennessee doesn't have anybody. And Indianapolis doesn't have anybody. It already went north. Steelers don't have anybody. Talked about the Bengals already. Hell, is he better than T. Higgins? Again, that's a debate for some of y'all. I'd take Terry over T. Higgins, but again, somebody might be like, hell no. And that's, again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Cleveland doesn't have anybody, unless you want to consider Jerry Jeudy. I don't. That's not even a conversation for me. And Baltimore doesn't have anybody. I mean, Zay Flowers. Is he better than, is Terry better than Zay Flowers? That's a conversation for you guys to have, right? Then you go to the AFC West. Chiefs don't have anybody right now. Chargers don't have anybody right now, even though I like Lad McConkey a lot. Raiders don't have anybody right now. And is he better than Cortland Sutton? I say yes. But again, that's the conversation for you to have. But just off of that conversation alone, he's not top 5, right? Probably not even top 10. Just off of the guys that we just named. So we'll see. We'll see. But again, he's somewhere in that 10, 11, 12 range. Somewhere in there. That's kind of where that's at. Swaggy P. Been a member for 28 months. Who writes, hope all is well. Lou, same with you, Swaggy P. Who writes, Lou, I need Garrett on this team. Which one? Myles Garrett? Garrett Wilson? I'm assuming you're talking about Myles Garrett. Don't we all? Don't we all? But again, I can't allow myself to think that way because, as I've said to you already, I don't really see that as a real thing. Until that becomes a thing, I'm not going to allow my brain to even go in that direction. So many things have to happen, so many moving parts in that whole situation. But the thing that is the most, I think, important for everyone to understand is Myles Garrett doesn't control anything in the situation other than where he goes. He doesn't control anything. He can't tell the Browns. I mean, look, if he's willing to make the sacrifice, which is to not play football, then there's some real power there. He's not sitting out of football. He just wants to play somewhere else. He doesn't get that choice, though. This isn't the NBA. You don't get to call your shots. You're one of 53. You're not one of 15. Superstar player in the NBA can dictate where they go. Like, I'm done playing basketball here. You either trade me or I'm going to make life living hell. You saw what Jimmy Butler did to the Miami Heat. This ain't the NBA, though. Either Myles Garrett is going to play for the Cleveland Browns or he's not going to play football if they decide that's the case. And we all know he ain't sitting out. He ain't built like that. So I can't allow my brain to, to be taken to that place, knowing that there's a very realistic possibility that isn't going to take place. So, it'd be nice. We could sure use him. we could sure use him. We could use any of the Garretts. Myles, Wilson. We can use them all. WWU. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, wouldn't be shocked if the Allen money goes to Osa. I said that I saw that over the weekend. That's one of the things I led with. That I saw a conversation where someone said, you cut Allen, save the $16 million, and just reallocate that to Osa Odigizua as a free agent. Bless me, God save you. And my rebuttal to that is, what has Osa Odigizua done in his career to warrant that kind of money? Someone's going to vastly overpay. If you're paying for a guy, the amount of money that Osa Odigizua is reported to command, which that's why free agency is dangerous, because you're paying for a guy that you're projecting is going to play better than he's already played in his NFL career. That's a dangerous proposition, right? Like, Osa Odigizua has never had more than 4.5 sacks in his NFL career. And that was this past season with Dallas. 4.5 sacks. That's a down year for Jonathan Allen. 4.5 sacks. What did he have this year? 3? Maybe? And like 3 is a good year for Osa Odigizua. That's a year where we like bitching about Jonathan Allen's production. And you want to get rid of Jonathan Allen and reallocate those sources to an Osa Odigizua for what exactly? Now, again, next year he could break out and have 9.5 sacks. And that's what you're paying him for. You're paying him for what you expect him to do. You're using past results as a future indicator as to what you're going to get. And you're hoping that he's on the incline because last season was his best season getting to the quarterback. And we know he's a disruptor and can get into the backfield and play on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. But he's also undersized. He's also a part of the reason why the Cowboys routinely get run on every year, because they have no girth inside. Now, while I'm not telling you he is the problem, he's a part of the problem, but he also can be a part of the solution if you put the right guys around him. I'm not doubting that he's talented. I know he's talented. But is he worth the type of money that someone's about to pay him in free agency? I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Again, if I'm paying that kind of money to somebody, you better be capable of getting me 8 sacks in any given season. You better be a Kobe Turner. If I'm about to pay you $25, $26 million, you better be a damn Kobe Turner. I don't think he's that. He could be, but he ain't shown it yet. But I saw that. I brought it up. Tim O'Brien, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Terry's 13 TDs last year changes things with JD5 at the QB position. And I get that. I get that. But there's just certain things that, again, Terry McLaurin doesn't do, right? There's certain things he can do, and there's certain things he doesn't do. But here's what I will tell you. He will garner more respect around the league for what he can do with JD5 at quarterback than what has transpired the previous, 5 years of his career before this past season. So we think we're just scratching the surface with those two. And I don't disagree. But will Terry ever evolve to the level of a top 5 receiver in the league? No. Because it just doesn't look the same. He doesn't move like Brian Thomas Jr. He didn't move like Malik Neighbors. He doesn't move like Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. He don't move. Well, a lot of people don't move. Most people don't move like Tyreek Hill. But it just looks different when certain dudes do it. It just looks different. It looks different when Garrett Wilson does it, right? And yes, Terry can catch with his hands. This narrative that Terry can't catch with his hands, that's bullshit. But is he a natural hands catcher? No, we've all heard the story about him going out to Ohio State the first time, and when he was a high school student, and Urban Meyer told him, go home and catch 200 balls a day and then come back if you want us to even consider you. And that's what he went home and did. Caught 200 balls a day, came back, and they gave him a scholarship. But he's not a natural hands catcher. We see that in the way that he plays. Doesn't change the fact that he's a dog and that he can go get it. But it does change how certain plays take place. So, yeah, 13 touchdowns is a big effing deal. Big effing deal. And I see Terry being a tremendous target. Mike Evans, I left him out. Now, and that always happens. And I feel bad because a lot of people do that. And I'm guilty of doing that too. With Mike Evans. Got to stop leaving him out of those conversations. When we talk about some of the best in the league, Mike Evans is easily one of the most disregarded. That shit has to stop. I'm guilty of that as well. And so, yes, when you start naming names, it's hard to put Terry above a lot of guys. Like I said, he's somewhere in that. Based on, like, Terry still doesn't have, and again, those that are going to cape for Terry, they'll harken back to his quarterback situation, this, that, and the third. And that's cool. But I've seen receivers who have had worse quarterback situations still get you 1,300, 1,500 yards despite having, Brandon Weeden at quarterback or Derek Anderson at quarterback. I've seen guys go ape shit. I've seen guys go nuclear in seasons where they've had less than stellar quarterback play. Larry Fitzgerald every year until he got Carson Palmer, had shit quarterback play, and every year he put up big time numbers. He might have gotten, I think it was Palmer first before it was Kurt Warner. No, it was Kurt Warner first. He got Kurt Warner. That changed everything. And then he got Carson Palmer after that. But anywhere in between all of those quarterbacks, it was shit. DeAndre Hopkins, go look at the quarterbacks he played with in Houston. If you about that life, you're going to put up the numbers anyway. Terry still put up 1,000 yards despite his quarterback situation every year. But he still hasn't hit 1,300 yards. I don't even think he's hit 1,200 yards in a season yet. I thought he was going to do it this year. Still didn't do it this year, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was 11 and some change this year. So it's hard to put him in that rarefied air. Top 5 guys, you got to put up some numbers, man. He just hasn't done it. So we'll see. You know, if he can penetrate the top 10 when it's all said and done, we'll see. Tim O'Brien, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Tim writes, last question. BTJ and Malik wide receiver rankings greater than scary. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like at the receiver position in particular, because it's such a dependent position. I generally don't like putting rookies above veterans, but I can tell you right now, both of those dudes are going to be better than Terry McLaurin. I can tell you right now, just watching them. If they stay healthy and they continue on the trajectory that they're on after one season, they're going to clear Terry McLaurin easily. Look, we got to remember, Terry McLaurin was a 3rd-round pick for a reason. Okay. These are both 1st-round picks we're talking about here. 1st-round talents. Like, that's not an accident or a coincidence that those guys went in the 1st rounds. In the 1st round, rather. And when we talk about guys that are better than Terry, that's what makes Terry unique, is the guys that we're putting ahead of him, those guys were 1st-round picks. They're more talented than Terry McLaurin, which is why they went in the 1st round. Terry's not a 1st-round pick. Terry McLaurin is in that DJ Moore conversation. And even DJ Moore has numbers. Even DJ Moore has numbers. Terry's in that group of receivers. DK Metcalf, DJ Moore. Like, that's the group where Terry exists, in that mix with those guys. And that's a good group to be in. But that's the 2nd tier. That's the 2nd tier. It ain't the top tier. Devontae Smith, all of those guys, that's where Terry exists. In that group. I think he's better than Devontae Smith, but that's where he exists, right? In that 2nd tier. Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors, when it's all said and done, they're going to be in that top tier. Hell, I'd already put them in the top tier already. If Neighbors doesn't miss, those games with the concussion, and he had the worst quarterback play of any team this season. Any team. I mean, it was really bad in New York with the Giants. Brian Thomas, what did he put up? You actually got me curious to see what my guess is. If he put up 1,200, he already had more yards in one season than Terry had in any season of his career. He already did it in year 1. See what he did. Yeah, that man had 1,282 yards on 87 catches and 10 touchdowns in his rookie season with Trevor Lawrence out for most of the season. Like, what are we talking about here, right? Like, this dude is already one of the best receivers in football, man. Like, yeah, he's above Terry already. Malik Neighbors, I don't know if he hit 1,000 just because of the injury situation. Let's just see what Terry's best year was, stats-wise. Terry's best year stats-wise He didn't even hit 1,100 this year. He hit 1096 this year, right? Or 82 grabs. His best season was 2022. 77 catches, 1191, and 5 touchdowns, right? So, like, Brian Thomas has already eclipsed that in 1 year. More catches, right? More yards and more touchdowns. Terry's best year receiving touchdown catch-wise is 87. Brian Thomas had 87 catches this year. So he's equaled Terry's best output in 1 year. He's got more yards than Terry's ever had in his career. And oh, by the way, who else does Jacksonville have at receiver? I'll wait. So the whole, well, Terry doesn't have any help. What help does Brian Thomas Jr. have in Jacksonville? I don't want to hear the quarterback conversation. Who was throwing him the ball? Mac Jones? Like, what do we, I mean, I don't like, we got to stop making excuses at some point and just say Terry is who he is. And he's really good. Okay? He's really good. He's dealt with some bullshit and still had 5 straight years of 1,000 yards or more, right? And 75 catches or more. But he'll never be one of the best in the league. Like, when I say one of the best, like, he'll never be elite. Let's just say it that way. He'll never be elite. And that's okay. That's okay. DMV Bay, thank you for the super chat. Or it should be okay. For some of you, it's not okay. You refuse to believe, and that's fine. That's your thing, not mine. DMV Bay, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, in regard to Terry, being a first-round pick does not define your talent level. Brady dispelled that again, but he's the exception to the rule. Okay, look around the NFL. Look at all the guys that are starting in the league at quarterback. Look at where they were drafted. It's rare to find someone drafted outside of the first 2 rounds as your starting quarterback. Like, we can't use the Tom Brady thing because that's the exception to the rule. He's an outlier. You know, you can't just say, well, Brady did it. How many other guys outside of Tom Brady did it? You just need application, opportunities, talent, and desire to attain it all. You're not wrong. Look at all the 3rd-round picks. Look at all the 4th-round picks, 5th-round picks. Guys went undrafted. You just have to be talented, which if you make it to this level, you're talented. You got to get you're right about opportunity. That matters a ton, right? Getting an opportunity to go somewhere where you're going to have a chance to play and show that you can ball. But ultimately, there are levels to this, as I always like to say. It's levels to this shit. Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, they're at another level. At a totally different level. The reason Terry talked about wanting to work on yards after catch, you can't get to their level if you can't catch a 5-yard pass and turn it into a 65-yard touchdown. That's why it was so cool to see Terry on that slant against the Eagles in the championship game, break a tackle and run for a touchdown. Because in this league, if you want to be one of those upper echelon 1,500-yard receiving guys, you're going to have to make some dudes miss. You're going to have to run after the catch. Because how often are you getting behind NFL defenses? How often is that taking place? And Terry just doesn't do that. He's not making guys miss. There's no real run after the catch for Terry. And even when it is, it doesn't end in touchdowns a lot of times, like it should. Being a first-round pick does not define who you are. You're not wrong. But it does speak to your talent level. Talent doesn't always equal success. You could be super talented and lazy. You could be super talented and not have the same mentality, right? You work hard, but your motivation isn't intrinsic. It's extrinsic, right? It's external motivation, not internal motivation. So unless somebody lights a fire under you, you don't get the best out of that player, even though he's way more talented. But again, you go back to, because Tyreek Hill wasn't a first-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. I always get where he was drafted at wrong. For some reason, I always feel like he was a 3rd-round pick. But I could be wrong, and he could have been a first-round pick. But he also had off-the-field issues, too, when he got drafted. So that might have played into him falling to the third round, if he was even a third round pick. Somewhere I felt like that was a myth that I created in my mind, and he really was a first round pick. But I digress. Jay, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Jay writes, Lou, not gonna lie, I'm gonna miss rage bait about BSJ. Hey. It was, I never wanted him to begin with. Y'all know how I felt about him. Never wanted him. But once he was here, you already know how I operate. I don't have, even if I don't want you, once you hear, you family. So it was, we had our, like, there were times when we thought he actually could be good. Remember the Minnesota game against Justin Jefferson? Where we was like, yo, Benjamin St. Juice held his own. He still had like 141 yards receiving in the game, but he held his own in that game. He forced an interception. They called back a pick six. It was a penalty. I didn't like the call because they had been letting physical play go in that game, but it was a penalty. But the one he got cooked on at the end, he wasn't ready yet, but nobody cares. Honestly, his career in Washington was a lot like Bashaud Breeland's, where there were flashes, there were moments where we thought, hey, he could be something, but ultimately he wasn't. Shadow Striker 789, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I love my dude Terry, but a lot of people are confusing top 7 wide receiver season with top 7 wide receiver as a player. He bounces into top 10 barely right now because of touchdowns. He's not a top 10 receiver. Like I said, he's always been on the outskirts of the top 10, like 11, 12, 13, 14, no further than 14, but somewhere in that, he might be at 10 right now, right? If you made a list, he might be at 10 because of the consistency. When you start putting the consistency in there with the body of work that he's starting to build, you might start putting him in a conversation where he's top 10, where he's 10. But every time we do this exercise, because new guys are coming in the league every year. Like I just told you, Brian Thomas Jr. is better than Terry McLaurin. You can be mad if you want to, but he is, okay? Malik Neighbors, you can't say that based off of his rookie season, but you see the talent, man. You see where that's going. You understand what he is. You see where that's gonna be in a couple of years. You're right. But fine, you don't want to put him in front of Terry right now. That's okay. His numbers don't warrant him being in front of Terry right now. But Brian Thomas does. Brian Thomas does. Terry's not better than Jamar Chase. He's not better than Justin Jefferson. He's not better than Devontae Adams right now. He's not better than Tyreek Hill. He's not better than Nico Collins. That's just 5 guys. That's just 5 guys right there. We can keep going. He's not better than... Let's just stop. Because it sounds like I'm bashing Terry, and I'm not. And some of y'all take it as such. But we've had this conversation before. Love Terry to death. But ultimately, he is where he is. I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it because I know what Terry is. There are 64 starting receivers in this league. 64. If you want to count third receivers, then triple it. Okay? 32 times 3 is 96. Triple it. If I'm telling you that he is, if we just go with 64, out of the top 64 receivers in the league, he's top 15. What are we talking about? Why is this a problem? I don't understand. It's a lot of receivers that play in this league, and he's top 15. That's a good thing. It's a good thing. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. John Perez, my guy, JP, thank you. Writes, damn, LT, Allen wants to leave. I was hoping that going to the NFC title game would be enough to get him to stay. Milton Williams to replace him, maybe. This ain't an Allen wants to leave. You think he sat through all the shit that he sat through to then get to this point and be like, yo, I want out. We're actually good now. No, he wants to be a part of this. They don't want him. This ain't a Jonathan Allen wants to leave. This is they want him gone. I think you got it backwards, JP. And even if they wanted him and he wanted out, it would be strictly because he wants an extension and they don't want to give it to him. Why would you give it to him? What has he done to warrant him getting new money? Nothing. Nothing. So, this isn't a Jonathan Allen wants out. This is it's $16 million over there that we could claim if we get rid of this dude. I don't know about you, but I'm looking at that 16 mil and it's looking awfully scrumdiddlyumptious over there. I'd love to add that to our $82 million worth of cap space that we currently about to be sitting on. I'd love to make it damn near 100 by moving on from Jonathan Allen. That's what that looks like to me. Less about him wanting out, more about them saying, hey, it's been real, bruh. But sorry, guy, you got to go. That's what this feels like. Milton Williams now, to your other point, he is interesting. Very interesting. And look, I don't know what his sack totals are, but I know this much. He's a problem. A big, big problem. Let's see. Let's see what his he had 5 this season, sacks, did Milton Williams. He had a 4-sack season and a 5-sack season. So he's proven that he's a problem. Again, I think somebody's going to overpay, though. He's really good, though. I like him a lot. But again, in a year where they're telling us that there's a lot of available defensive linemen, specifically defensive tackles in the draft that are really good players that are, highly draftable prospects, the guys that you should be getting in the first 2 days of the draft, and even depth that expands beyond day 2. It's hard to envision them wanting to spend big resources on a Milton Williams or a Oza Odigizua when you could get some cheap labor in the draft. Like I told you, there's certain positions you're willing to spend on in free agency. Corner is one of them. Tackle is another one. You prefer to find your own tackle in the draft, but you'd be willing to spend on that. Receiver is another one, if you can find one in free agency, but you prefer to get that in the draft. Like you prefer to get every position in the draft. But there's certain ones. Edge rusher, you can take that in a heartbeat if you can get it on the free agent market. So hard to find good edge rushers. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me. Your man Louie T here on this installment of the Command Post Live. Jonathan Allen, more likely than not, on his way out of Washington. Anytime a team, like I know y'all been following the Matthew Stafford situation a little bit, it's a fluid situation, but it's really interesting how that shit is playing out right now. Anytime a team gives you permission to go out there and see what the market has for you, or they give you permission to seek a trade, one foot is already out the door. They're just trying to get something on the way out. This feels like, hey, Jonathan Allen is 30 years old. His production is declining. We weren't happy with what we got out of him in 2024. He's got 1 year left on his deal. It's $22 million, but guess what? None of it is guaranteed, and we can recoup $16 million in cap space if we move on from him. what is there to talk about in their minds? What is there to talk about? Let's get this money. Let's move on. If we can get a pick, all the better. But if we can't, you're walking away with $16 million. It's a hell of a consolation prize. That's what this all boils down to. Is we got a chance to get $16 million. $16 million go a long way towards a Terry extension. $16 million go a long way towards signing a cornerback this offseason. $16 million go a long way to re-signing Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Jeremy Chin. $16 million could go a long way. Instead of spending it on a dude who's giving you back diminishing returns. And if you can get a pick in the process, shit. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I hope to see you guys a little bit later on. I think myself and the Commander Kings will be linking up tonight. I'm going to listen to the AP presser. And if I have any thoughts on what was said, I may jump back on here a little bit later on. If not, we'll talk about all of that and more tonight with the Commanders Kings. You'll definitely see me tomorrow night for sure. Because I think we're supposed to hear from DQ tomorrow. So press conference today, press conference tomorrow. If you don't hear from me again today, you'll definitely hear from me tomorrow. So with that said, you guys go enjoy the rest of your day. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. Hopefully see you later on this evening. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. God bless. Good day.